Hi everyone, and welcome to my Superliminal Speedrun PB Analysis. I'm Samwise, and today I'll be reviewing 1ce's 2311 glitchless run. The intent of these PB reviews is not to give every single optimization compared to the world record, but rather to give pointers to improve strategies, find easy time saves, and give advice for anyone else in a similar time bracket. I have a tutorial series for people looking for general tips, but these reviews will give me a chance to mention things that I may have left out, such as common mistakes or more subtle techniques. With that in mind, let's get into it. Now, as we get set up here for the actual run, I just want to say that I'm going to be focusing a lot on movement. As we get to sub 23 and faster, it's one of the most important things to keep in mind. And as little of a time save it is to optimize movement for individual things, you'll see just how much it adds up by how much I talk about it. So from right off the bat, you can see that he placed the cube right here, which means we're not aiming directly at the door. So it's a bit of a curved path. Then again, he kind of curves to the right and then moves forward when he could have just made one straight diagonal line. However, it's good aim. He finds the cube immediately and unfortunately misses the button, which loses a tiny amount of time, but it is important. Here we can see we kind of aimed towards the middle of the hallway when he could have aimed right at that door. Moving towards the wall, and again that kind of scooching pattern, I don't know, rounding corners, whatever you want to call it. But the main point is that it's not direct. One click cheese, that's pretty good. And you can see he kind of scooted towards the wall here so you can grab this cube early, which really isn't that necessary, and as we'll see, doesn't actually save much time, because he still took a second to find this plank and is already walking all the way to the door. If he rotated the plank, it would have been easier to kind of place it in that cubby earlier on the button. He stopped to rotate this cube into place, and then kind of walked closer to this wall here rather than the broken window. Stopping again to place this cube. Faster runs will place it as they walk and then kind of like catch it on its way down so that they can make sure it hits the button. Again, he was kind of in the middle of the hallway and then rounded that corner. Decent sign. A little slow to turn around, but that's fine. I've actually noticed that 1ce kind of underturns. So in like doing a 90-degree turn, he'll usually turn most of the way and then stop short and then correct after, which loses a tiny amount of time. So I would actually recommend that he increases his sensitivity or DPI. That was an okay final room. Again, my only suggestion there is to keep moving. That's really the name of induction, is just don't stop moving. But as you can see, it's still sub 2. While there's still plenty to improve, sub 2 is a good goal, and especially for just a sub 23 run. But as we can see from world record, you can definitely get that down at least another 10-11 seconds if you really try. So here you can kind of see a little bit of the underturning I'm talking about. But for the most part, it's he's doing a good job staying close to the walls, close to the corners. So instead of rotating the signs so that it was lined up like this, he actually walked so that it was already set up, and it kind of gave another curved path. Whether it was like a jump cooldown issue, he wasn't able to get that immediate jump off that ledge. And here we're aiming towards this, the lower boxes instead of straight at the door. You can make it up on those boxes with one ledge grab. Not sure why he's going through the left door. The right door is definitely faster. And you can see kind of rounding these corners here. And when I say rounding corners, like rounding corners not as in, turning them, but doing a more circular motion rather than two like very direct lines. Here's an interesting thing I see a lot. People with this cube will kind of walk in the middle of this hallway so that it will already be set up the correct size, as opposed to resizing it while walking towards it so that it gets bigger while still walking in a direct line. Just a small thing, if ice looks up a little bit while jump resizing, it will actually be a little more effective. The cube will move a little bit more, and it might actually be a little bit bigger, but otherwise it's totally fine. By kind of moving the door to the side there, let me back up. So you see how he went to the side and then back? That made it fall slower instead of just dragging it straight up. So he can't use it as a ramp. Or it would just be much more inconsistent because it fell so slow. Jumping upstairs is good. Looks like he's got a lineup for this cube. And it works. Having a little bit of a hard time finding the door with his mouse, so just practice finding the right sensitivity so that you don't overcorrect, you don't undercorrect. You can just kind of find the direct line and get there. So you can see he's kind of in the middle of this walkway instead of aiming more towards this corner until just kind of the last second. So I find it interesting that he's been walking towards the moon as he grabs the door so that he can use this lamp. Of course, it's always faster to just rotate the moon after grabbing it immediately and then using the first lamp in the room. This is still faster than his original split, which is great. But there is a much more effective way to do the moon, which is about the same difficulty, I would say. It just involves fewer steps. Good strafing. And he's doing a better job of keeping close to these corners. I'm sure just because it's such a common part of the game is that opening hallway, or that opening reception area. It's just easier to remember those movements. Good pull. Rotating the half cube so that it's long ways is a tiny bit faster. I wouldn't say is super important for just a sub 23 run. Good job following that corner, that was great. There is a faster way to do this room that avoids the ledge grab, but again, I would say it's a little too risky for just a sub 23 run. Unless, of course, you have it completely consistent. In which case, go for it. So the line in there in this room was a little bit inefficient. Let me back up there. So usually fast runners will aim straight for this door with their movement as they focus in on these two cubes here. Instead, Ice kind of walks straight at this cube as he grabs them both. And just one more thing. Aiming further out does not necessarily make it faster. So if you aim straight at the door, it will still go out the correct length. But otherwise, that was a good length, a good combination of not too long but not too short. This was an old update, so this strat still works. It was a little small if you want to keep doing that, but it's fine. A little bit of a curved path. The one cube method where you explode and then use that one cube and box jump with it, or just use it as a single step, is a little more consistent because you don't have to worry about the exploding cube bit. But using just the simpler method of placing the whole cube at the bottom of the ledge is perfectly fine as long as you walk straight towards it instead of rounding around it like you just did. So time that jump right, try jumping a little bit sooner. But otherwise, it's a fine cubism. There's not really much to that level. So here you can see he's kind of aiming towards the center of the hallway again instead of towards the door. And of course, we know from like triangles that taking the straight path is faster than the two like 90-degree paths. I found personally that placing objects above my head is wastes a little bit of time unless my mouse movement is perfectly straight up and down. So I try to move my mouse as little as possible with those little grabs of moving things out of the way. I've noticed that ice kind of always puts them directly overhead, which while it is better than trying to place them to the side, if it's possible to not have as much mouse movement, it will help keep the lines straighter, as you just don't have you have less wiggle room with your mouse. But yeah, blackout, there's not much to the clicking movement, especially if you do blind maze. So you really got to focus on movement here. And he's attempting blind maze. And luckily he got the first ledge on the first try, which is great. And I can see the visual cue. I'm not sure if you can in the playback, but I actually missed a little bit or missed the entrance to the second part of the maze and had to correct a little bit. So there is some improvement there. And then again, I'm not sure if you can tell with brightness, but ice is actually scraping up against this wall here, which decreases movement a little bit, and then is late on that jump onto the last box. And that turn there at the end, just a little bit slow. If it's faster, then it's a more direct line. And again, that was kind of one big curve rather than a couple sharp turns. So the second he lost there was probably from blind maze. Pretty standard start to clone. Good spam clicking, good jump late on that door so that you get all the way over the wall. If you jump too early, you end up getting stuck on the lights instead. This is an interesting, little bit risky method that seemed to work. If it's consistent for him, I would recommend that he just keep doing that for now. It's fine. As far as left and right stairs go, it's pretty half and half. Doesn't necessarily matter. It depends on if you walk in from a certain side of the door. So I'm just going to go ahead and back up to say what I mean. When walking through these doors, ice tends to walk through the center of hallways and doors, which means it's truly half and half for him. But if you end up walking through the left side, and actually I would say by going to the left side for the green apple, you should stay to the left side for these doors and continue going left for the stairs. If you happen to go right for the green apple, then I would say it makes more sense to go for the right stairs. Here you can see kind of the unfortunate thing about taking rounded paths is he ended up too far. So we're going to go ahead and look at that path again. So he starts towards kind of where I do a lineup right around this area, but then aims towards the green button and does a bit of a diagonal path, and he overshoots. Rather than having one straight path to a good lineup and then doing 1 or 2 clicks, he misses and has to correct. Bit of a mouse issue there. I'm not really sure what happened, but still recovered. You don't need that many signs for that room. Spam clicking is cool, and if you manage a really long bottom layer, good for you, but it's not totally necessary. And then, of course, the end of clone is just straight lines through corners. Jumping over the occasional pole and then the ladder at the end would be the fastest way. And again, you lost time probably on the red apple there. So now we're getting into probably his favorite level, Dollhouse. Decent turn out of the backwards movement. Yeah, a little bit more of the under turning. Good correction, making sure that it's big enough that he doesn't get stuck on the other side. I'd say that's a good size. I'm not sure if he did this before the lineups came out, but there is a way to make sure that you're just the right size to jump on top of the white table and still fit under the door. So he's a little bit small here. If he's going for radio skip, he grabs that radio way too early. Because he needs to get closer anyway to go through the route, it's better to wait to grab the radio before it's a little bit bigger so that it's easier to keep the right size. And it's interesting, you can tell he's thinking about doing radio skip because he kind of does this rounded corner, just like an optical, where instead of doing one more resize to get it the right size, he does a curved path to make sure he's backed up far enough for it to be the right size. And then, of course, changes his mind and takes the stairs. Radio skip does not save that much time, but setting it up can lose time if you don't do it right. This is a slower fan method that unfortunately the fan was just too small. If you're going to be close, better to be a bit too big than to be too small. Again, there's a lineup for that window, but again, it's much better to take your time resizing, make sure it's the right size, rather than rushing and making it way too big. Solid bounce castle. And then good job keeping the bounce castle big, while not making sure it's a little bit smaller than original, otherwise you won't fit through this door. So here, my only critique would be that he's not standing close enough to the entrance portal to his left. So when he drops this, he kind of has to turn and then move towards it, which makes a little bit of a risk for being too late and not being able to go through the keyhole. It's just a little less consistent. This drop's too small because the door sticks out and is touching the outside of this box wall here. So it's good that he kind of rotated right so that it would still have enough space to get as big as he needed. But as you can see, this was a great improvement from his past PB on Dollhouse. And remember, no matter how fast you are, you can probably always save time in Dollhouse. That was a pretty quick first audio skip, and it looked like it worked. Here he lost a tiny bit of time waiting for the can to fall out before he started moving again. If aim is good enough, then it's fine to just keep moving and grab it as you walk. Most players tend to try to jump off that speaker for the second audio skip, but as long as you keep momentum up, just walking straight off of it should be fine. And of course, I guess Ice doesn't care about the environment, which is sad. Here, lineups are totally your choice. Ice had an interesting one there, aiming at the corner instead of at the bottom of the shadow. One thing I do like about Ice's movement in here is that he actually does turn around instead of trying to do it blindly. Turning around allows you to see the proper route, stake to the corners, and then move through it as quickly as possible. Whereas not turning around allows you to keep the same mouse position, which makes you not need to know all the lineups. But it has less efficient movement throughout. So if you know lineups, use those. And Ice did a good job at that. There was a little bit of an issue where he was a little too high, but he made a quick correction and it was alright. Here, just a little bit of advice: you could jump earlier to see if you can click the door earlier rather than walking around the obstacles in the way. And here, a bit of a rounded corner there. Walking a little too close towards the center. If he stayed right, then he could use the falling to move directly towards the center. I kind of explain it better in my tutorial series, but we're trying to optimize movement, so if the only place you can move is horizontally, then you can save that movement from earlier. Here, staying in the middle is actually probably a good idea for movement for once. It allows you to stay close to the center, but also make sure you don't have like a tendency to look the wrong way. Again, you can see he's kind of prepping to grab this cube, just like in induction, by moving to the right. I actually do this in my tutorial, which is a bad habit. Grabbing the cube early makes sure it's a good size, and he is moving directly towards this buoy. I guess he didn't hold jump long enough, and that's unfortunate. But it's better to move straight towards the door, grab the dice block as soon as you see it, instead of trying to grab that dice block early. That was a decent night there. Here, some people like to grab this dice as early as possible, and it's really small. And some people actually prefer to wait longer so that it's bigger and they don't have to worry about the ledge grab here. So I would say that Ice did a good job there. It was actually a good elevator maze. And then turning around as soon as you get in the elevator is the fastest way. So if you miss the checkpoint, it's actually a good thing. So you can see he actually hit this right wall first and then the left, which means what's going to happen is by backing straight up aiming at this corner, he'll end up too far to the right. And actually, I don't know if you can see it in the lighting, you can see a lighter patch where the elevator was originally. And so if you hit the checkpoint, that means you pass straight through the center, and you can tell which side you're kind of leaning towards when you pass it. So as I said, he was a little bit to the right, and you actually want to prefer to be a little to the left so you can see the clock early. By being too far to the right, this wall is in the way and you have to make a curved path to see that clock. And unfortunately, he missed the early click. But that is one of the main things in Labyrinth, I would say, that people miss out on. So for the beginning of White Space, I find it interesting he stopped and turned around early to resize the clinic rather than using the light. And left it dropping a little too long, and it was a little too close to him to go through. And because he didn't walk all the way up to the light, this clinic was a little too far back, so he couldn't aim through the soda machine to grab it early. I'm gonna go ahead and skip through the paradox. And of course, White Space is, as he calls it, a walking simulator. This run was from 2021. If he runs it again, I suggest he changes to 2022. Unless you're watching this a year in the future, in which case, oh. This was before we discovered the checkpoint reset strategy. So there's some 2 seconds of free time save. And we discovered that aiming towards the door or away from the door doesn't necessarily matter as much as I thought it used to. Just simply walking straight out from that reception area is what's important. So by wiggling the mouse side to side as he was, he actually loses a little bit of time because his path is more of a squiggle than a direct line. So for this, I actually like to take my hand off the mouse as soon as I find my lineup. Here he's walking kind of in the middle of this hallway, even though he knows that when he gets down here, he's going to turn right. So it's just another little rounded corner there. Again, aiming not quite at the door until like halfway through that walking area. Had an unfortunate bounce off that fallen light. But not a huge deal. Here the cube was placed a little early, it was a little big, and he got an extra ledge grab. The ledge grabs, I would say, aren't as important, especially for cubism, until you're at much faster, more competitive times. But they do still lose time, and if you can consistently and efficiently avoid ledge grabs, then focus on that. Walking on the L instead of kind of jumping across that gap loses a tiny amount of time. And then again, he's kind of walking closer to the center than to the side, even though the next movement is a right turn. A little more under turning right there. So here you do kind of like a drop resize. There are several different ways to resize the chess piece. Walking straight up to it and then using it immediately is probably the slowest. Drop resizing, like Ice just did, is the next slowest. Trying to use the portal to drop resize is faster technically, but is also not recommended, because if you miss catching it, then the chess piece will actually disappear because you're in a portal, and portals in this game are weird. Then the fastest way, of course, is grabbing it early and resizing as you walk. So drop resizing is fine. It's a perfectly valid way to get it large enough to do one-piece chess pretty easily. My one critique is that Ice is staying pretty much on the far right side of the chessboard, which means that at the end he has to make this very long diagonal path back to the door. So I would recommend, making a path either on the left side of those right tiles, or finding a way to cross over into the center tiles, or just starting on the center tiles and moving straight up. Missing the first block on cheese skip is unfortunate, but it's fine. Probably could have made that jump, but thankfully you got the ledge grab. By being on such a large block and not really looking at where you're going, it's kind of risky actually. So I would recommend that Ice make kind of more looking up as he does the box jumps. As other people do, they make very quick click and dragging up so that it moves the cube more. They have to make fewer jumps, and it's much easier to tell where exactly you are. And then of course here, Ice let go of the cube, which I think it was big enough that it wouldn't fall through the hole. But if Ice happened to let go of the cube and it fell down along with him, that may have been an issue if he actually lands on the cube and misses the trigger to end the level. And then of course, we have retrospect. Decent retrospect, dropped a little bit of time, and that's a 23:11. So just a quick little summary of this run. It's pretty solid. It's clear that Ice knows the route and knows the idea of exactly how to get from point A to point B in a pretty quick amount of time. He had some hiccups and was able to recover, but really the main thing holding Ice back from a sub 23 is movement. And thankfully, that's something that's really easy to work on. And it's not something that you have to practice one specific section. It's something that you can do every time you play. So if you're getting close to 23 or sub 23, then I highly recommend you take another look at your movement, at how you're going around corners, at how you're choosing to do resizes. Are you stopping to resize? Are you resizing as you're walking? It really depends on where you are and where you're going. I hope you found this analysis useful. I've been meaning to do this for a while. I'd like to thank Ice for giving me permission to do this with his run, and I'm wanting to do reviews for other time brackets, so let me know if you want me to analyze your run. As always, you can reach me through the comments or through the Superliminal Speedrun Discord linked below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.